Alrighty guys, so the results were in and you guys actually chose the headphone. I don't know why I was expecting you guys were gonna choose the knife. So today we're gonna be making this render over here. And for this, we're gonna be using Blender Octane and Photoshop together. So without further ado, let's begin the video. Alrighty, so this is the model that we're going to be using over here, the Artistry LCD 2, and it was made by Pilika. So Pilika, I'm sorry if I butchered your name, and thank you for making this 3D model. So I'll just download it and open up Blender for you. Okay, so I got Blender loaded up over here, so let's begin. As tradition goes, we're gonna select everything and delete it. Why? I have no clue. So let's import our 3D model. Import OBJ, where is it? Here it is. So 3D model, OBJ, file, import, OBJ, and I'll just scale it down. Rotation X -90. So yeah, basically I'm not gonna be using the stand for this, so it can go. But for everything else, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be adding an empty over here. So I'll add an empty over here, scale it down, put it on the headphone. I'm not planning to even use the cables of this. So Control I, and I'll select the box again, Control P, and parent it. So whenever I move this, everything will move together. So I'll just delete the cables because I'm not going to be using them. And yeah, we have our headphone over here. So I've been getting a few questions. Hey, I downloaded Blender Octane, but it's not working for me. Well, what's the solution? First of all, go into Octane, split your screen, go into Octane kernel, and add a quick node tree. So by default, it gives us direct lighting kernel. We don't need that. We want the path tracing. So let me just put it in, and I'll add this over here. Boom, we got the kernel loaded up. So yeah, now if I go over here, it's working and I have all of the samples over here. Perfect. And I'll just split this again. I'll tell you in a second why I did that. I'll turn the lower one into another thing called Blender Ref. So you might know Pure Ref. It's basically a software that you use to put your reference images onto another monitor. Now it's also in Blender as well. You can directly put images over here for references. So I'll make a new Blender Ref scene, import, go to my downloads, and here are the images that I need. So these will actually help me to know which texture goes where. So I'll turn the top one into shader editor over here, and let's start texturing it. Let's start with this one. So I'm going to be deleting the principal BSDF over here. I'm going to be adding the metallic texture. And for specular color, I'm going to be adding an RGB color, pumping it over here and turning it black. Looks really good. So this is the same thing that's gonna go on to the bolts as well. So I'll just grab it and link the materials. And how do I link the materials? I'll select the first object that needs the material to be applied, and I'll select the other object where the materials already applied. Then go Control L, link materials. And now we need to add the texture for this. So I know this is going to be carbon fiber, so I'm gonna go to Blender Kit, go to textures, and first of all let me go over here to search filters and turn it to texture base, then type in carbon fiber. Okay, so let's select our carbon fiber texture over here. I'm gonna be using this one, and I'll go into Octane and cycles to Octane converter. I'll just quickly convert this. Okay, so we applied the texture to this, and I'm gonna select the other piece, select this piece, and go Control L, link materials, and now comes the time for the wood. So for that we're gonna do the same. We're gonna go into Blender Kit and type in wood. You know what? I can use this. So we're here. Now what I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna be converting it, and right away we see one thing. It's not working. Why is it so? Just because of these extra nodes. These are actually cycles nodes and they won't work over here in Octane. So what I'm gonna be doing is I'll just directly connect this into the albedo. Now you see they are working. So I'll just take this, unwrap, looking good. Same goes for roughness. And normals as well. I don't think we might need the displacement over here. But as we can see, in the reference it's really glossy, but this is matte. How can we fix that? Well, let me take out the metallic part. Somewhere around over here looks good. And now we actually need to darken it up. And how do we do that? By adding a color correction mode. Here it is. So I'll increase the saturation and take down the exposure a bit. Shift the hue where is red. Yep, we got the red. So I'll just paste this over here. Control L, link materials, and same goes for these. No, actually they are gonna be plastic, the same material that we're gonna be making for this one. And now let's add a leather material over here. So if you go back into Blender Kit, leather, okay, now I'll convert this. Not bad. I'll just directly connect in the normals over here. I'll just scale it down first, don't worry about the color. Yep. Now I'll just take this out. Yep, something like that. I'll take this cup, take this one, Control L, link materials, and now let's work on these. So I'll just delete the principal BSDF, add a metallic material over here. And I'm gonna be adding a cinema 4D noise over here. So I'm gonna be adding a UV transform over here, taking the scale and bumping it all the way down. So now as we can see, the noise is affecting the object as we want it to. Now we're gonna be looking for the other settings that we have over here. Basically the presets. Okay, that one looks really good. So I'm gonna be selecting the material, metallic material again, and putting this into the roughness. Not bad. And now we're gonna be making the plastic material over here. But before we do that, consider subscribing if you're getting value from this. So I'm gonna be taking the bolts over here before I do that, and I'll select them as well. Then I'll select this one, Control L, link materials. Now we'll make the plastic material over here. So I'll delete the principal BSDF, add a universal shader, turning it into black. And take the roughness all the way. And now we're going to be adding it into the bump. So I'm going to be adding the cinema noise again. So I'm actually using Node Wrangler right now to preview this. If you have ever used it in Cycles, you know if you press Ctrl Shift and click on a node, it will actually give you the direct output. So I'm going to be adding a UV transform over here, scaling it down. That looks good, but I actually wanted to go a bit more further. So it's gonna be, yeah, something like that. I'm gonna go back to my material. As we can see, it's a bit too much, so I'm just gonna decrease the power from over here. That looks good. Okay, so now we're gonna be adding the material for the headband, and we're gonna be using the material for this one that actually came with the model. So let me just add I'll just add a universal shader over here. I'll connect it. I'm gonna be adding an RGB image over here and connecting it to the albedo. Open. Fabric. And I'll add a UV transform over here. Get the scale and scale it down. Somewhere around there. Now I'm going to be taking this, Control Shift D to duplicate it while still connected to the 3D transform, and set the gamma for this one to 1. Now it's going to be fabric normals and connecting it to the normal. Looks good. I'll just decrease the power of it a bit. And adding a bit of roughness. Yeah. Now that looks good. And for the plastic material, it's gonna be really simple. I'll just delete this, Shift A, universal. Turning it into black. Taking all of the roughness over here. And yeah, that's about it. Okay, now since our model is ready, we need to ask ourselves 3 questions for making this render. Question number 1, why does this render exist? What problem is it solving? And where it's gonna end up? Hollyford actually did his conference in BlenderCon and he asked the same questions. And since I have seen that, it actually has helped me out a lot in my journey as a Blender artist. And I've been using this technique for the past week or 2 now. And it did change my perception about 3D rendering. So why does this render exist? Someone bought this headphone and he wanted to show it off. And what's the reason of this? He wanted to show the beauty specifically. And where does this exist? This render actually exists on his Instagram. So we got that right. So let's start making the environment. So for this environment, I'm actually planning to use a background image instead of using an HDRI. So let's go over here to pixels, and I've already typed study room, and the picture that I'm planning to use is this one from, I'm sorry Elliot, I'm gonna be destroying your name over here, Train Elliot. So Train Elliot, thank you for this amazing click. It's already downloaded in my PC. So yeah, let's start working on it. So first of all, I'm gonna be adding a plane over here and placing the headphone, wrong view. And I'm gonna be rotating the headphone like this and putting it on the surface. Ah shit, I forgot to link the materials for this. So yeah, quick fix. Now what I'm gonna do is I'll add that image over here that we just downloaded. GZ and go GY and add a new material over here. I'll add an RGB image over here and open it up. Go into my downloads and here it is. So I'll put it over here into the albedo, and also what I'm gonna be doing is adding an emission over here, texture emission, and putting this texture into the texture emission as well. I'll make it 100% in roughness with no specular. So I'm basically gonna be using this image to put light over here. So let me just put the camera over here. And the lens that I'm willing to use for this one is actually a 108 lens. I'll take this image, put it a bit down. And you know what? Now I'm actually gonna be switching up over here, turning these off, putting it on render view. And if I go over here to my camera, what I usually like to do is, where is it? Yeah, here it is. Viewport display. I come over here to passport and put it to 100% so I can totally focus on this part. So now I'm just gonna start making a frame of it, somewhat like this will do. Let's try this. Okay, it's still a bit up, so what I'm gonna be doing is, by the way, I'm using the local axes right now. And how can you access the local axes? If you want to rotate it on its local X, you press R and then double X. So this is the local axis of X. So I'll just put it down. Let's make sure it's not clipping. Alrighty, rotate it over here, come back over here to camera, just go out a bit, put the image over here, and now I'm gonna be turning off the world light. For that, we're gonna be going into the world settings and just turning down the power. And now for our image, if we go into object mode, we will start increasing the emission power. So double-sided, yeah, that worked. So I'll just put it into like 10, 5, yeah, 5 looks good. Okay, as we can see, the image is actually stretching right now, so let's just quickly fix that. Scale it up even more. And let's start adding our lights. So we can see it's going to be a warm shot. So I'll just add an Octane era light over here. And I'll take the color from the background. I'll just increase it a bit and go to GY and just put it over here. Now let's add the texture to our ground. So basically I'm willing to make it like a table. So it's gonna be a bit more wood, but let's see what sort of wood textures that we can find. I think we could add planks. These one looks even better. So I'll just add this. Come over here to Octane, convert. Ooh, that looks good. But let's make it like this. Yo, that one looks even better. Let me go to the top and fix it. Yep, even better. And as per the light, should be over here, and I'll add another fill light over here. And for this fill light, because it's becoming too flat now, I'm gonna be putting it onto like 25%, and instead of over here it should be from this side. Looks good. And I'll select my camera, add an empty over here, go back to my camera and go to autofocus and select my empty. And use f-stop of 1.8. So now if I put it over here, we get the headphone. But let's take it a step further. Instead of 1.8, what if I do 1.4? Ooh, that one looks even better. Let's rotate our headset a bit. Yeah, that looks really good. Now I'll enable the other features in Octane. I'll convert it into aces. Now I think we might have to increase the light as well. So either we could just bump up the exposure, but we're going to be losing detail over here. So I'll just increase this light over here, multiply it by 2, or actually multiply it by 2 again. Yeah, that looks better. And I'll take this and multiply it by 2. And one thing I noticed, the displacement is not working for this, and the reason being it's actually using the displacement node from cycles. We don't want that. So what we're going to be doing is adding a texture displacement over here, and we're going to take the displacement from this, plugging it over here, and for the normals we'll directly plug it in over here. So now let's readjust the height a bit. Yep, it's working perfectly. Now I'll just readjust this. Okay, looking good. You know what? I think we could go a bit closer with something like this. And I could even put it like this. Yeah, this actually looks better. So see guys, it's more so about experimentation. What are you willing to do and how much time you're willing to spend on it. Okay, now I'll be adding a little bit of vignette over here, and denoise obviously just to render it out, but I'm not gonna label it yet. And for like the focus point, it should be, wait, where's the focus point? Hello? Yeah, here it is, sorry. For the focus point, it has to be over here. So now I'm gonna be adding a little bit of lens effects over here, starting with the bloom. A bit of glare. A bit of chromatic aberration over here, somewhere around like this. And cutting it off a bit, somewhere around there. I think that looks good. So I'll just render this out and we'll take it into Photoshop and then we'll composite it together. Alrighty guys, so I've opened up Photoshop, so let's load up our EXR over here. So yeah, as we can see, everything is washed out over here. So what's the first thing that we need to do over here? We'll come over here to image, go to mode, and turn it into a 16-bit image. Merge. Yeah, everything should be default. Now I'll just convert it into a smart object, because the reason to convert it into a smart object is that if we want to change the camera raw filter that we're going to be applying right now after we apply the LUT, we could do that. Otherwise, whatever you are doing right now in Photoshop, it's totally going to bake into the image. So I'll go into camera raw filter over here. And start adding the texture, a bit of clarity, reducing the highlights a bit, somewhere around over there, adding a bit of contrast, warming up the shot, adding a little bit of red, adding the vibrance back, reducing a little bit of the shadow, coming down over here to optics, adding the vignette a bit, I just hope it's not too much. So how much should it be? Yeah, that looks good. Coming down to the effects, I'm gonna be adding a little bit of grain. Yeah, 4 looks really good. And I'll press OK. So this was right out of Blender, and this is after the basic color correction. Now let's add our LUT. So I'll add a color lookup table, and this one looks really good, Bill and Ted, but I'll just add like 55% of fill on it. So now let's add a few more elements. You might have remembered in my last tutorial I used some particles, so let's use them. I'll just put it on screen, and I'll just put them on the background. I'll invert them. I'll add a mask, invert them, and take my brush tool, put it to like 0% hardness, and I'll start painting over here. And now we're gonna be adding a blur to it. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Something like that. And Control J for your smart filter, and I'll delete this. So now I'm gonna be adding it somewhere around over here, like really close to the lens. Yeah, that will do. I'll just reduce the fill, and with that we are done. So I hope you liked this render and you got a lot of knowledge from this tutorial. By the way, let's keep the community engaged. If you have any sort of feedback regarding the tutorials that I'm making, put them down in the comment, or better yet, you guys can even message me on Instagram if you have any specific question. So with that out of the way, I think we're done with this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.